The Greco-Bactrian Kingdom was, along with the Indo-Greek Kingdom, the easternmost part of the Hellenistic world, covering Bactria and Sogdiana in Central Asia from 250 to 125 BC. It was centered around the north of present-day Afghanistan. The expansion of the Greco-Bactrians into present-day northern India and Pakistan from 180 BC established the Indo-Greek Kingdom, which was to last until around 10 AD. Independence. Diodotus, the satrap of Bactria, founded the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom when he seceded from the Seleucid Empire around 250 BC and became King Diodotus I of Bactria. The preserved ancient sources are somewhat contradictory, and the exact date of Bactrian independence has not been settled. Somewhat simplified, there is a high chronology and a low chronology for Diodotus' secession. The high chronology has the advantage of explaining why the Seleucid king Antiochus II issued very few coins in Bactria, as Diodotus would have become independent there early in Antiochus' reign. On the other hand, the low chronology, from the mid-240s BC, has the advantage of connecting the secession of Diodotus I with the Third Syrian War, a catastrophic conflict for the Seleucid Empire. Diodotus, the governor of the thousand cities of Bactria, defected and proclaimed himself king. All the other people of the Orient followed his example and seceded from the Macedonians. The new kingdom, highly urbanized and considered as one of the richest of the Orient, was to further grow in power and engage into territorial expansion to the east and the west. The Greeks who caused Bactria to revolt grew so powerful on account of the fertility of the country that they became masters, not only of Ariana, but also of India, as Apollodorus of Artemita says, and more tribes were subdued by them than by Alexander. Their cities were Bactra, and Darasar, and several others. Among these was Eucratidia, which was named after its ruler. In 247 BC, the Ptolemaic Empire captured the Seleucid capital, Antioch. In the resulting power vacuum, the satrap of Parthia proclaimed independence from the Seleucids, declaring himself king. A decade later, he was defeated and killed by Arsaces of Parthia, leading to the rise of a Parthian empire. This cut Bactria off from contact with the Greek world. Overland trade continued at a reduced rate, while sea trade between Greek Egypt and Bactria developed. Diodotus was succeeded by his son Diodotus II, who allied himself with the Parthian Arsaces in his fight against Seleucus II. Soon after, relieved by the death of Diodotus, Arsaces made peace and concluded an alliance with his son, also by the name of Diodotus. Sometime later he fought against Seleucus, who came to punish the rebels, and he prevailed. The Parthians celebrated this day as the one that marked the beginning of their freedom. Overthrow of Diodotus II. Euthydemus, a Magnesian Greek according to Polybius and possibly satrap of Sogdiana, overthrew the dynasty of Diodotus I around 230–220 BC and started his own dynasty. Euthydemus's control extended to Sogdiana, going beyond the city of Alexandria Escat founded by Alexander the Great in Fergana, and they also held Sogdiana, situated above Bactriana towards the east between the Oxus River, which forms the boundary between the Bactrians and the Sogdians, and the Iaxartes River, and the Iaxartes forms also the boundary between the Sogdians and the nomads. Seleucid invasion. Euthydemus was attacked by the Seleucid ruler Antiochus III around 210 BC. Although he commanded 10,000 horsemen, Euthydemus initially lost a battle on the Arius and had to retreat. He then successfully resisted a 3-year siege in the fortified city of Bactra, before Antiochus finally decided to recognize the new ruler, and to offer one of his daughters to Euthydemus's son Demetrius around 206 BC. Classical accounts also relate that Euthydemus negotiated peace with Antiochus III by suggesting that he deserved credit for overthrowing the original rebel Diodotus, and that he was protecting Central Asia from nomadic invasions thanks to his defensive efforts. For if he did not yield to this demand, neither of them would be safe, seeing that great hordes of nomads were close at hand, who were a danger to both, and that if they admitted them into the country, it would certainly be utterly barbarized. Geographic expansion. Following the departure of the Seleucid army, the Bactrian Kingdom seems to have expanded. In the west, areas in northeastern Iran may have been absorbed, possibly as far as into Parthia, whose ruler had been defeated by Antiochus the Great. These territories possibly are identical with the Bactrian satrapies of Tapuria and Traxiana. Contacts with the Han Empire to the north. Euthydemus also ruled Sogdiana and Fergana, and there are indications that from Alexandria Escate the Greco-Bactrians may have led expeditions as far as Kashgar and Urumqi in Xinjiang, leading to the first known contacts between China and the West around 220 BC. The Greek historian Strabo too writes that they extended their empire even as far as the Seas and the Phrygia. Several statuettes and representations of Greek soldiers have been found north of the Tian Shan, on the doorstep to China, and are today on display in the Xinjiang Museum at Urumqi. Greek influences on Chinese art have also been suggested. Designs with rosette flowers, geometric lines, and glass inlays, suggestive of Hellenistic influences, can be found on some early Han Dynasty bronze mirrors. Numismatics also suggest that some technology exchanges may have occurred on these occasions. The Greco-Bactrians were the first in the world to issue cupro-nickel coins, an alloy technology only known by the Chinese at the time under the name of white copper. The practice of exporting Chinese metals, in particular iron, for trade is attested around that period. Kings Euthydemus II, Agathocles and Pantaleon made these coin issues around 170 BC, and it has alternatively been suggested that a nickeliferous copper ore was the source. From mines at Anorak, copper-nickel would not be used again in coinage until the 19th century. The presence of Chinese people in India from ancient times is also suggested by the accounts of the Chinas in the Mahabharata and the Manu Smriti. The Han Dynasty explorer and ambassador Zhang Qian visited Bactria in 126 BC, and reported the presence of Chinese products in the Bactrian markets. When I was in Bactria, Zhang Qian reported, I saw bamboo canes from Keong and cloth made in the province of Shu. When I asked the people how they had gotten such articles, they replied, our merchants go buy them in the markets of Chengdu. Upon his return, Zhang Qian informed the Chinese Emperor Han Wudi of the level of sophistication of the urban civilizations of Fergana, Bactria and Parthia, who became interested in developing commercial relationship with them. The Son of Heaven, on hearing all this, reasoned thus: Fergana and the possessions of Bactria and Parthia are large countries, full of rare things, with a population living in fixed abodes and given to occupations somewhat identical with those of the Chinese people, and placing great value on the rich produce of China. A number of Chinese envoys were then sent to Central Asia, triggering the development of the Silk Road from the end of the 2nd century BC. Contacts with the Indian subcontinent. The Indian Emperor Chandragupta, founder of the Mauryan dynasty, had reconquered the northwestern subcontinent upon the death of Alexander the Great around 322 BC. However, contacts were kept with his Greek neighbors in the Seleucid Empire. A dynastic alliance or the recognition of intermarriage between Greeks and ancient Indo-Iranians were established, and several Greeks, such as the historian Megasthenes, resided at the Mauryan court. Subsequently, each Mauryan emperor had a Greek ambassador at his court. Chandragupta's grandson Ashoka converted to the Buddhist faith and became a great proselytizer in the line of the traditional Pali canon of Theravada Buddhism, directing his efforts towards the Indo-Iranic and the Hellenistic worlds from around 250 BC. According to the edicts of Ashoka, set in stone, some of them written in Greek, he sent Buddhist emissaries to the Greek lands in Asia and as far as the Mediterranean. The edicts name each of the rulers of the Hellenistic world at the time. The conquest by Dharma has been won here, on the borders, and even 600 yoyanas away, where the Greek king Antiochus rules. Beyond there where the four kings named Ptolemy, Antigonus, Magus and Alexander rule, likewise in the south among the Coles, the Pandyas, and as far as Tamrapani. Some of the Greek populations that had remained in northwestern India apparently converted to Buddhism. Here in the king's domain among the Greeks, the Kambojas, the Nabakas, the Nabapamkits, the Bojas, the Pitanikas, the Andras and the Palladis. Everywhere people are following beloved of the gods' instructions in Dharma. Furthermore, according to Pali sources, some of Ashoka's emissaries were Greek Buddhist monks, indicating close religious exchanges between the two cultures. When the Thirumogalaputta, the illuminator of the religion of the conqueror, had brought the council to an end, he sent forth Theris, one here and one there. And to Aparantaka he sent the Greek named Dhammarakita, and the Thirumaharakita he sent into the country of the Yona. Greco-Bactrians probably received these Buddhist emissaries and somehow tolerated the Buddhist faith, although little proof remains. In the 2nd century AD, the Christian dogmatist Clement of Alexandria recognized the existence of Buddhist Sramanas among the Bactrians, and even their influence on Greek thought. Thus philosophy, a thing of the highest utility, flourished in antiquity among the barbarians, shedding its light over the nations, and afterwards it came to Greece. First in its ranks were the prophets of the Egyptians, and the Chaldeans among the Assyrians, and the Druids among the Gauls, and the Sramanas among the Bactrians, and the philosophers of the Celts, and the Magi of the Persians, who foretold the Saviour's birth, and came into the land of Judea guided by a star. The Indian gymnosophists are also in the number, and the other barbarian philosophers. And of these there are two classes, some of them called Sramanas, and others Brahmins. Clement of Alexandria, the Stromata, or Miscellanies, Book 1, Chapter 15. Expansion into the Indian subcontinent. Demetrius, the son of Euthydemus, started an invasion of the subcontinent from 180 BC, a few years after the Mauryan Empire had been overthrown by the Shunga dynasty. Historians differ on the motivations behind the invasion. Some historians suggest that the invasion of the subcontinent was intended to show their support for the Mauryan Empire, and to protect the Buddhist faith from the religious persecutions of the Shungas as alleged by Buddhist scriptures. Other historians have argued, however, that the accounts of these persecutions have been exaggerated. Demetrius may have been as far as the imperial capital Pataliputra in today's eastern India. However, these campaigns are typically attributed to Menander. The invasion was completed by 175 BC. This established in the northwestern Indian subcontinent what is called the Indo-Greek Kingdom, which lasted for almost 2 centuries until around AD 10. The Buddhist faith flourished under the Indo-Greek kings, foremost among them Menander I. It was also a period of great cultural syncretism, exemplified by the development of Greco-Buddhism, usurpation of Eucratides. Back in Bactria, Eucratides, either a general of Demetrius or an ally of the Seleucids, managed to overthrow the Euthydema dynasty and establish his own rule around 170 BC, probably dethroning Antimachus I and Antimachus II. The Indian branch of the Euthydemids tried to strike back. An Indian king called Demetrius is said to have returned to Bactria with 60,000 men to oust the usurper, but he apparently was defeated and killed in the encounter. Eucratides led many wars with great courage, and, while weakened by them, was put under siege by Demetrius, king of the Indians. He made numerous sorties, and managed to vanquish 60,000 enemies with 300 soldiers, and thus liberated after 4 months. He put India under his rule. Ukratides campaigned extensively in present-day northwestern India, and ruled on a vast territory as indicated by his minting of coins in many Indian mints, possibly as far as the Jhelum River in Punjab. In the end, however, he was repulsed by the Indo-Greek king Menander I, who managed to create a huge unified territory. In a rather confused account, Justin explains that Eucratides was killed on the field by his son and joint king, who would be his own son, either Eucratides II or Heliocles I. The son drove over Eucratides' bloodied body with his chariot and left him dismembered without a sepulchre. As Eucratides returned from India, he was killed on the way back by his son, whom he had associated to his rule, and who, without hiding his parricide, as if he didn't kill a father but an enemy, ran with his chariot over the blood of his father, and ordered the corpse to be left without a sepulchre. Defeats by Parthia. During or after his Indian campaigns, Eucratides was attacked and defeated by the Parthian king Mithridates I, possibly in alliance with partisans of the Euthydemods. The Bactrians, involved in various wars, lost not only their rule but also their freedom, as, exhausted by their wars against the Sogdians, the Arakotes, the Dranges, the Aryans and the Indians, they were finally crushed, as if drawn of all their blood, by an enemy weaker than them, the Parthians. Following his victory, Mithridates I gained Bactria's territory west of the Arius, the regions of Tapuria and Traxina. The satrapy Tauriva and that of Aspanis were taken away from Eucratides by the Parthians in the year 141 BC. The Greco-Bactrians seem to have entered in an alliance with the Seleucid king Demetrius II to fight again against Parthia. The people of the Orient welcomed his arrival partly because of the cruelty of the Arsacid king of the Parthians, partly because, used to the rule of the Macedonians, they disliked the arrogance of this new people. Thus, Demetrius, supported by the Persians, Elymes and Bactrians, routed the Parthians in numerous battles. At the end, deceived by a false peace treaty, he was taken prisoner. The 5th century historian Orosius reports that Mithridates I managed to occupy territory between the Indus and the Hydaspes towards the end of his reign. Heliocles I ended up ruling what territory remained. The defeat, both in the west and the east, may have left Bactria very weak and then open to nomadic invasions.